Uh, Good afternoon, Tim O'Connell. I'm Chair of the Utility Board. I'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Mercer Island Utility Board to order, please. Uh, Elaine, are you going to do the honors of calling roll?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
All right. Chair O'Connell,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Quantz,
Present.
Board Member Laird,
Present.
Board Member Marshall,
Present.
Board Member Milton,
Present.
Board Member White, and Board Member Olson.
Present.
And let the minutes reflect that Board Member White is not here through no fault of his own. Technical issues. First item of new business is introduction. I believe Craig Olson is our new board member, and Craig, if you want to introduce yourself, we'll see if Todd can join us in a couple of minutes before we have all the other board members introduce themselves. So please, you've got the floor.
Hi, I'm Craig Olson. I've been a resident of Mercer Island about 16 years now. And I graduated from high school here a long time ago and moved away and am back. So I'm a retired civil engineer and public works director, and really excited about being on the utility board. I was on the planning commission for 8 years and also the Open Space Conservancy Trust. So thank you.
Marvelous.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard. And still no Todd.
Yes, in fact, he is being promoted to panelist right now.
Oh, all right. We'll just give a second or two for him to.
I think there he is.
Yes.
Or at least I see a T. White
Yep.
picture.
Todd, are you able to hear us?
Oh,
I am. Sorry for the delay. I had some technical difficulties and happy to be joining. Thanks for your patience.
Well, no, thank you for joining, Todd. We very much appreciate it. I don't know that we met. I'm Tim O'Connell. I'm the chair of the utility board. Welcome. Congratulations on your appointment. Why don't you, if you don't mind, give us a few words of introduction about yourself, and then you missed Craig's self-introduction, but then we'll go around and introduce each other.
Well, thank you. No, I'm excited to be on the commission. My family moved here about 10 years ago. Our children attend West Mercer Elementary School. I currently serve as an experimental test pilot for the Boeing Company. I have served in executive functions, chief pilot, executive director at the Boeing Company for several years. And now I'm just running kids around the island to different events. And I'm also the president-elect for the Mercer Island Rotary Club. So thank you.
Marvelous. Well, again, welcome. Thank you for applying. Thank you for serving. Congratulations on your appointment. Why don't we just have all of the other, since we have 2 new board members, why don't we just have the other current board members introduce themselves briefly. Vice Chair Quantz.
Everyone, welcome Craig and Todd. It's Todd or Tim? Todd.
Todd, yes.
Sorry about that. Will Quantz here. I've been on the utility board for about 2 years, lived on Mercer Island since 2018. Have a 4.5-year-old that goes to preschool at the JCC, and professionally, I work in consulting around infrastructure project planning for a water and wastewater engineering and consulting firm.
Great, thank you, Will. Let's see, we'll do it kind of in order of seniority. Stephen Milton.
Yeah, so Steve Milton, to be honest, I don't even remember how long I've been on the board. Something like 8 or so years, I think.
Oh, more than that. More than that.
We've been on the island since 2010, and besides the role on the board here, run a local internet data center and fiber to the home service provider called Gigabit Now and ISO Fusion.
Thank you. George, I think you're next.
Yeah, I'm George Marshall. I have been on the board for probably 4 years. I'm retired from Puget Sound Energy, where I worked for about 23 years. We've lived on the island for 48 years, same house, love every minute of it. Our daughter graduated from high school here. Um, and just I want to welcome the new board members. It's always great to have energetic, enthusiastic people on the board. Really appreciate your service. Thank you.
Here, here. Well said, George. And Meredith.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the board. I'm glad to have two new members as well. I'm Meredith Lair. I've lived on the island for 27 years now, which I can hardly believe I can say. My kids are adults out of the grown-ups, like have their own houses even. Both went through the schools here. It's been terrific living here, a place that when I was growing up, I thought I would never live, you know, having grown up in Bellevue. And I've really enjoyed being on the board. I've been on the board about 2 years.
Thank you. And again, I'm Tim O'Connell, currently chair. We've lived on the island since '98, I think, '98 or '99. And similar to some of the other stories, both of my boys went through Mercer Island schools and are now grown and live off island. My connection is back in the day. I'm still a practicing attorney, but for quite a long time, I spent a lot of my practice in front of the Utilities and Transportation Commission. So bring that kind of a perspective to the board's work. I've been chair for the last several years, and I've been on the board. Steve and I started on the board at the same time, so I think we're at 10 years.
10, yeah.
I think it's 10, Steve. So welcome, and I echo the comments. I really appreciate Craig and Todd, your willingness to serve, and I think we do good work for citizens in the island on this board. The utility operations are an important part of what Mercer Island does for its citizens, and I think we help add a little value to that process. So.
Tim, I'm just going to interrupt a minute. I forgot to say that I'm a retired attorney for what's that's worth, but I don't know that any of my law practice had anything to do particularly with utilities.
It's either retired attorney or recovering attorney. I don't know what's the appropriate way of putting it. And Councilmember Jacobson, do you want to say a few words to introduce yourself to our new members as well?
Sure. This is my second year on the utility board. I've been on the city council since 2020. And I guess what I say about my lawyering is that I don't have to practice anymore because I got it right. I've been the last 30 years or so, I've been involved in construction, largely public works contracts and that sort of thing here in Alaska. And I'm starting year 36 on the island.
Marvelous. Thank you. And again, thank you for your service, sir.
You're welcome.
All right. Unless there's anything else we should talk about introductions, next item of business on the agenda is board elections. Every year we elect a chair and a vice chair. Any member of the board is eligible for either of those. I would open the floor to nominations for chair.
Well, Tim, if you're willing to serve again, I would nominate you as chair. I think you've done an outstanding job.
Oh, thank you, Meredith. Yes, I would be willing to serve again. This would probably be my last year because I might be moving off the island next year. But
No.
Well, we'll see. It depends. It depends. But it's not forever that we're going to be. But yes, I would be willing to serve for another year.
I'll second that nomination.
Thank you, Steve. Any other nominations? I'm supposed to, the city paid for me to go through this parliamentary procedure class. So I know that I'm supposed to call for nominations 3 times. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll declare the nominations closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
I've had a request, excuse me, Chair O'Connell, I've had a request from our city clerk that we actually do a roll call vote on this, which is unusual for this, but because it's an election, it's her preference. So if you don't mind, I will quickly run through a roll call vote.
Please do.
Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Todd White.
Aye.
Board Member Milton.
Aye.
Board Member Marshall.
Aye.
Board Chair O'Connell.
Voting for myself just seems wrong, so I'll abstain.
Board Member Lair.
Aye.
Vice Chair Quantz.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody, for your vote of confidence, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. Now open the nominations for vice chair.
Well, Will, if you're still interested in doing it, I would nominate you to continue.
I am interested and would appreciate the chance to keep learning more. So absolutely.
Good.
Is there a second?
Oh, I can second that nomination.
Very good. Once again, we'll go through the drill. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations for the role of vice chair? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll declare the nominations closed. I presume we should go through a roll call again. If you'll call the roll, please.
Happy to. Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Milton.
Aye.
Board Member Olson.
Aye.
Board Member Marshall.
Aye.
Chair O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Chair Quantz.
I'll abstain.
Board Member Lair.
Aye.
Thank you.
And thank you for your help, Elaine. Congratulations, Will. Be careful with the S word. Yeah. All right. So now we've got our new members. We've got our chair and vice chair. Are there any public appearances?
No public appearances this evening.
All right. No public appearances. We'll move on to regular business. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from our March 12 meeting.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Looks pretty straightforward to me. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Marvelous. We had a discussion before we commenced the meeting. We're going to reorganize the agenda, so I'm exercising chairman's prerogative, and we're going to have the water briefing first, please. Item 3 on the regular business.
Good evening to the board members. Jason Kittner, Chief of Operations. Just for the new folks on the call, your city staff that are here include myself. You have Elaine Sommergren and Patrick Masha, our two deputy public works directors. Elaine oversees the operations and maintenance of the house. Patrick oversees the capital engineering teams. And then with me this evening is also Alan Hunter, our utilities ops manager, and Clint Morris, our capital division manager, is here. So between the collective group of us, you normally see at least one of us or multiples of us here on these meetings, and you'll become very familiar with all of us. So thank you for your service. And with that, we're going to dive right into a very exciting and fairly complex water system briefing. I had a chance to talk with the current board members about a month ago to talk about the current situation. I have not had a chance to brief our new board members, so this will be an introduction to the topic, and hopefully it's an opportunity and platform for the utility board to ask additional questions. Just so everyone's clear, the presentation we're going to share tonight is the one that actually we provided to the council last week. It's really similar. I'm gonna just touch on a few things. That presentation is recorded, so if you want a more in-depth or the other flavor of the presentation, you can go back and watch that on the city's website as well. So with that, we'll dive into it and we'll talk about what's going on. We'll quickly go through the system overview, what the emergency is about, what our water supply is, and then why we're executing a water contingency planning process right now. So with that, thank you, Elaine. This is a quick overview of how the city receives water from Seattle Public Utilities. For something that's completely 100% dependent on water being transmitted from Seattle Public Utilities. As you can see on the screen, the pink lines are Seattle Public Utility lines. The blue lines are Mercer Island owned lines. And then the green is the Shorewood branch. Again, a reminder for the utility board, Shorewood is a direct customer of Seattle Public Utilities. So the water comes across Bellevue. We're predominantly fed by the 16-inch line that runs along the bridge. It comes into the East Mercer boat ramp there, and that's where you can see that the Mercer Island 16-inch pipe joins the fold. And that is where we are currently being fed water now, as the 24-inch line that runs basically down to 40th and up 40th, that Elaine is so kindly pointing with her cursor. That is the section of Maine that we're going to talk about where the current leak is located. And that 24-inch line is what normally provides our primary source of water to the reservoir tanks. That's currently off right now, and we're being fed to the reservoir tanks via our 16-inch line or our canyon line, or also known as our emergency backup line. So obviously we're going from a 24-inch pipe to a 16-inch pipe, so change in diameter size, which has an impact on things that we'll talk about. So how do we get here? Back in early April, the city learned that 24-inch pipe that Seattle Public Utilities, that's their transmission line that feeds the island, feeds our two reservoir tanks, was leaking near 40th on 40th Ave near 95th Court, which you can see there on the map. There's the purple line and where the break is located. You will also note that there is a blue line there as well. That is the city's 6-inch AC pipe. So as water goes into the reservoir tank and then is distributed throughout the distribution system, that blue line is one of those distribution pipes. That's a city-owned pipe. The leak is on the purple pipe, which is the 24-inch transmission line. When the leak was discovered in early April, as you'll see here in a few slides, the site is very, very complex. It's very steep terrain. The pipe is located in steep slopes. It's inaccessible, and so the concern at the time was that if there was some slumping of those saturated soils on that hillside, it would catastrophically impact that 24-inch pipe, and then we would have millions of gallons of water rushing down a hillside in an uncontrolled fashion. So out of abundance of caution, we evacuated those homes until the water lines could be shut off. And I say water lines because there are two lines running along this hillside, the 24-inch SPU transmission line, as well as the city's 6-inch AC pipe line as well. So all in all, 20 homes were evacuated, out of an abundance of caution until those water lines were isolated and shut down. So the following day, crews were successful in reducing that water flow to the 24-inch pipe. The city was also successful in shutting down our 6-inch AC pipe that was there. Since then, the city council has declared a local emergency, and that was obviously ratified with the proclamation number 329. So we'll talk about why we have that water emergency and what the issues are here in just a few slides, but that's sort of the timeline of things. So what's been done since? This has been, when I say it's been the city's top priority, it has been the top priority. I can tell you that Elaine, Alan, and myself are breathing every moment, working on this project right now. It is complex and challenging and demanding in all different ways and shapes and forms, but it has been our top priority since early April, and it has taken some some time to actually get a plan in place that is moving forward now and in the very near future. Given the complexity of the site, the challenging terrain, topography, the location of it, ownership of the pipe, surrounding neighborhoods, it's taken quite some time to get a solution in place that was going to meet both the city needs as well as performance needs for SBU as well. So since then, the city and SBU are collaborating on a routine and regular basis. We're meeting 1 to 2 times per week. As the meeting started tonight, my phone was ringing with our liaison at SBU working towards getting this thing to the finish line. We've also decided to meet on a regular basis with the impacted neighbors that were evacuated. We meet approximately every 2 to 3 weeks with those neighbors. We have another neighborhood meeting scheduled in about a week or so from now to give them regular updates, talk about their concerns, provide them updates on what's going on, because there's quite a bit of activity happening in and around their neighborhood. And since early April, again, the city's abandoned our 6-inch water main. Near that leak, we had to move some water services over that were currently on that 6-inch pipe to a nearby pipe. We've had a number of geotechnical assessments. We have a geotechnical team working on this location in coordination with Seattle Public Utilities. And Seattle Public Utilities has really taken the lead in terms of what potential solutions are out there. It's currently their transmission pipe, and it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of application here. They have proposed a liner solution for it because of the challenging terrain, topography, and location of the pipe. And so we've been working with our water modelers and engineering team to make sure the performance of that liner meets the contractual and city operational needs to provide adequate water flow for the system. We also requested that Seattle Public Utilities complete a CCTV closed camera inspection of the pipe to really pinpoint the leak and identify if there was any sort of known factors on what contributed to this leak. We've also developed a water shortage contingency plan and some reduction action items associated with that, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. So why are we proposing a liner? So the picture on the right is actually the location that's on the site. That's the geotechnical team out on the site. When this started in early April, the vegetation wasn't quite as thick as it is now, but where the crew is standing on the right to where the location of the leak is, there's probably a 30 to 40 foot drop along this hillside. It's very, very steep. There's no adjacent roadway, and it's incredibly difficult to access. In the public works world, utility world, our operation and maintenance crews really prefer, and Alan can attest to this, they really prefer to make sure that if something goes wrong on that infrastructure, they can get to it with the equipment and necessary means to do what's necessary to fix it, make the repair. In this particular case, there's no vehicular access. It's on a steep slope. It's in the public right away, but private property is basically right next to it. There's not visible in this picture, but there's above ground, there's a overhead power lines. And then just to the right of the lady in green, there's actually 2 PSE gas lines that run along that bank as well. So very, very complex area. A conventional repair, which would require an excavation down to the pipe, below the pipe, around the pipe, would likely require the installation of some sort of a wall, and the ability to get a wall in for that shoring to complete the repair is nearly impossible given the surrounding utilities and topography in this location. So SP proposed a liner solution. The liner is coming from a contract out of the Midwest. This liner is actually a flexible liner that is smaller in diameter. It's got a protective coating around it, and they'll basically pull the liner through the pipe. They're going to create 2 excavation pits on either end of this pipe, and they're going to pull this liner through. And once it gets through, they're actually going to use a little bit of air pressure, and they're going to inflate the pipe and make it larger, and it will ultimately be about 17 inches, just over 17 inches in diameter, and it'll rest inside the existing 24-inch pipe. The benefits of this liner solution is it does not require that excavation that I was talking about of the slope area. It will be accessed via those 2 excavation pits on either sides of the pipe. And then additionally, the fact that it's going to run through the 24-inch pipe, Seattle Public Utilities is also going to put in some leak detection. They're going to put a vault in so that we can visually inspect this pipe moving forward, so that if there is any issues with the liner, it'll be very apparent and known early on if there are any issues. Not anticipating any issues, but just out of abundance of caution, taking those extra steps to make sure that we can continue to monitor it in the future. So as I was just talking about, the total liner length is just under 1,300 feet. So as you can see here, this map is the blue line is that 24-inch pipe. As you can see, the star in the middle is the approximate location of the current leak. I'm proud to say that Alan's crew and team really helped Seattle Public Utilities pinpoint that location of the leak with our own equipment. It was nice to see our crews go out there and help Seattle Public Utilities to the best of their ability. And he got pretty accurate with what we know now in terms of the camera inspection and where the leak's at, where the crew member actually identified it. So kudos to Josh Auckland and Alan's team for really pinpointing that location. But on this map, you'll see 2 access pits. The west pit has already been partially constructed. They did that to actually expose the pipe and get into the pipe to put the first camera in the pipe so they can inspect it ahead of the contractor coming out. When the contractor does come out on site, hopefully in the next 13 or 14 days from now, they will re-camera the pipe and they'll do the full length of the pipe to make sure there's no irregularities or sharp objects or things like that. They'll do a complete visual inspection, and if they find some issues in the pipe, they have the technology and equipment to address those before they pull a liner through this pipe. So all in all, you're looking about 1,300 feet of a new liner. I will make the note and the comment to the longtime utility board members recall SPU actually being with us a few years ago, talking about a section of this location. So east of the current break or the current leak, so east of that star, so to the right of the screen, Seattle Public Utilities had a capital project planned for replacement of this pipe. And so that work was already scheduled for 2025. They were ramping up they were finishing up their design and moving into construction next year for that piece. With the current leak of the location, they're actually going to do the full width as part of this project, including the piece that was already planned for 2025. Next slide. So our next steps, like I said, we've had the video inspection. They've passed it to us. We've confirmed that this pipe is a 24-inch pipe. It's got a thin mortar liner on the inside, and it's surrounded by a steel casing. As the approximately 350 feet or so from where they access the pipe is where they found some longitudinal cracking along the inside of the mortar liner of this pipe, and so. Our engineering team is doing some fine tuning and review of that, but it provided the information that we needed to confirm the location of the leak and that it wasn't something else that perhaps we weren't aware of. The good news is that we're on track to have the installer out. I believe, like I said, 13 days from now, June 24th is the date that they're targeting to have the contractor out to start pulling the liner through the pipe. Once that liner comes through, they've got a series of things they have to do to connect it to the existing pipe. They have to test it. They have to disinfect it. There's a number of steps that are required for us to make this fully operational. But we're hoping that the pipe will be fully operational by the end of July. Additionally, in meeting with the neighborhood out there and given the steep slope, we're working with our geotechnical team to develop a monitoring and assessment plan for that slope in that general area to detect any future soil movement that will happen out there. And finally, I'll make the note here that the last bullet is that we are exploring options for a long-term pipeline replacement in a different location. It is abundantly clear that the liner has a shelf life of anywhere from 30 to 50 years is what we're hearing. However, this pipe is in a very, very challenging location. There has been some history of leaks in this location. It is not a good long-term solution for this size of a transmission pipe. And so as part of our capital program. Part of the work that's taking place now, your city engineering team is actually exploring some feasibility and some analysis to relocate this transmission pipe. And Chair O'Connell, I can hear you now. Like, well, how's this going to tie into the Seattle Public Utility contract? That's one of the listed items in our work plan. It is directly tied to that because if we end up putting a new transmission pipeline in, the ownership will change. The connection with Shorewood potentially will change. There's a number of different factors that will come into play there, and that contract with SP will likely have to be revised. So stay tuned, working on that, but just sort of early heads up on things that are taking place. So what's our current status? The good news is we're still receiving water. You know, the way to understand how we operate our reservoir tanks is they're sort of constantly being drawn down and filling, right? It's this constant up and down sort of cycle that takes place. What we know is that as the summer weather warms up on the island, July is our peak consumption month. And we are usually exceeding 3 million gallons a day in terms of consumption during the month of July. The 16-inch line, because it's a smaller diameter, can only supply approximately 2.73 million gallons a day. So we're going to continue to start drawing down the reservoir tanks unless we put some conservation measures or recommendations in place. So that's why you've heard the city talk about the advisory, hey, water conservation is coming. It's to help with monitoring our volume in our reservoir tanks, because we don't want to draw those tanks down to an unsafe level. When I say unsafe level, in the water system plan that maybe you've had a chance to read, it's on the website. If you want some casual Sunday morning reading over coffee, it's a great read, recommend it. You'll see that there are required fire bands within those tanks. And that's where we need to keep our levels in the tanks above those bands to make sure that we have adequate fire suppression capabilities around the island. So we are trying to keep our tanks above that level. And so we have been in the advisory stage for water conservation. We will be moving to voluntary stage, which again, it's coming later this week, where we'll really ask the city and the residents to take a look at what things they're doing to help conserve water. And that, again, that's just to help keep those reservoir tank levels full, to maintain that essential public health and safety, and minimize those adverse impacts on the economy and the environment. So we are currently in the advisory stage. We're going to be moving to the voluntary stage later this week, early teaser. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we won't have to go beyond that, but our water response and contingency plans are in place. If we have to go to mandatory and emergency, the voluntary is, again, it's participatory. We're asking people to volunteer those actions, things like, making sure you're doing full loads of laundry, maybe not washing your car, doing, things like that. Maybe if you can, back off your pressure washing for the summer, maybe back off your irrigation, do some of those things. That's what we're asking in the voluntary stage. We had really, really good success last year during the previous emergency. I'm optimistic that we will see the same results this year, and this pipe will be up and operational by the end of July, and we'll be off and running. So with that, again, if you want further information on the full conservation efforts and things like that, there's a much deeper dive than the presentation that we did for the council last Tuesday. All the information is available on the website, but figured I'd pause there. It's a lot to sort of take in. I'm sure there's questions along the way, and so I'll pause.
I'll open it up for questions for any member of the board. Just use the raise your hand function. That way we can get you recognized. Not seeing anybody.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Stephen.
Steve.
Yeah, so I had two questions, but I guess I'll ask the first one first, which was obviously 17 inches is less than 24. So I was doing some quick calcs, and something like 3.08 million gallons per day for the 17-inch in comparison to the 16-inch at 2.7. So if we're still above 3 million, is even the 17-inch enough? How is that kind of being dealt with?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I'll give you the try and keep it high level answer. There's a ton of engineering and technical information that's going in and being reviewed. pressures come into play, elevation changes come into play, lots of different considerations. The system as a whole come into play. It is a smaller diameter. I think in a nutshell, it meets the contractual obligations that we have with SPU. With the caveat, there are times where it does not, and the times that it does not is when it's in like the peak demand, where SPU is also doing some things operational on their end, and when that happens, we're out of sync and we can't receive the volumes that we perhaps have in the past or have in the past. So what does that mean? It means that Alan and his team are in constant contact and coordination with the SPU operations teams, and the way they are meeting their contractual obligations. I'll say that with sort of this one specific scenario. We're continuing to talk to them about that. But the more important piece is we can meet our daily demand requirements, but it does require some syncing of operations between the two teams. And essentially what it means is when Seattle Public, and Alan's going to correct me if I do this wrong, but essentially when we're predominantly fed by the Cedar River watershed, when they switch their operations and they send water from the Cedar to the Tolt, when that action takes place in conjunction with our high demands, that's when we start to see some losses that take place. So if we can sync the timing of which they have to push and pull water to and from the Cedar and the Tolt with our operations, we can offset that. So it's, without getting like into the super technical things, that's the best way to describe it. So it's an operational piece. Our engineering team has done extensive water modeling and looking at this and making sure that it did meet the requirements. It is a smaller pipe, but there's a number of other factors that go into it. They are meeting their contractual obligations with that one sort of operational tweak to it.
So you, in that sense of it, you said over 3 million a day in peak. So that's not a lot over 3, not 4 million, but just a little over.
Okay. Yeah, and it's that, again, it's that the way we operate the tanks, it's that constant like ebbs and flows up and down, right? So it's that allows a little bit more flexibility in what we can do as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Will.
Yeah, two very different questions as well. So I'll just ask one and then we can move on to others. But Jason, I believe when you briefed us last month, I thought you had said that there was going to be some level of validation that this liner solution would work before you move forward. What did that look like?
Good question. So some of the board members may recall we brought in Confluence Engineering last year to help with the redundancy and reliability work for us. We actually have tagged them in and they have been at our hip along the way, making sure that we've gotten the right technical experts to verify all the different elements of this project, because there are a number of different moving pieces. And so the Confluence team has been working through that validation process, including, doing extensive deep dives on the type of material, the structural tank, the strength of it, the flexibility of it, what engineering pieces are required for it. So they have been part of that group that have been essentially helping us truth all of this work, and from the engineering side. So it's very layered because there's a number of different aspects to it, but Confluence has been hired. They've been working on our behalf, doing a ton of work to help get us to the finish line on this.
Todd.
Yeah, first of all, very good presentation. Thank you. Very thorough, detailed. But just to follow on to the question that was posed, maybe a little bit more specifically, do we have, I guess, data or instances where a liner solution has been successfully implemented? And can we look to those examples to give us confidence and or risk reduction? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yes, not within our own system have we used a liner solution. I can tell you currently, right this very moment, SPU is actually putting the same liner in our project in one of their lines in Seattle over at Interbay right now. We have verified this technology. We've done a bunch of phone calling and talking to other agencies that have used this liner solution. It is a viable technology and has been used for this type of application. I will say one of the big pieces that we had concerns over early on was when you get out to the site and you see the pipe and how it basically goes to the bottom of the ravine and then up and makes turns. There's quite a bit of deflection in that pipe, and we were like, how is it, like, in our experience, the liners we've used, they haven't been able to make those turns. Well, the way that this liner is installed, because it's a smaller diameter, and then they basically inflate it to its final size, it allows them that flexibility to make those turns. And I believe they can make up to a 90-degree turn and with this liner solution. So the short answer is we haven't used this specifically on Mercer Island yet. It has been used in the industry, and we have verified that it has been successful. And Seattle Public Utilities is installing it, and they're one of their lines currently right now, this very moment.
Okay.
Great,
George.
thank you. Appreciate yours.
Great, thank you. George.
I noticed, Jason, that the soil around the leak is being monitored, which I think is a tremendous idea. What would happen if there is movement of the soil? Given the location of the leak and the steepness of the slope, what measures can the city take to avoid from compromising the stability of the pipe?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I don't have a clear-cut answer for you yet. That's something that our geotechnical team, the geotechnical engineers, will have to weigh in on. If that's the scenario, they have a series of tools in their toolbox that could potentially be used if that was the case. I don't want to opine prematurely on what those could be, but that's why we're collecting the data, right? We use data to make good decisions, and so over the course of that data acquisition and evaluation, if that is the case, then we will have some sort of solution that we'll have to come up with. I don't know what that might be. Again, I'm a little hesitant to opine on that until we know what the data says. But that is something we are looking at.
All right, thank you.
So, just give everybody a shot. I have a question. What is the useful life of this liner?
They've said 50 years. I'm going to say 30 to 50 years.
And any replacement scenario that you're looking at would be shorter than that, I assume.
Yeah, so good question. So our replacement scenario is actually, you'll see it in the capital program coming up later this year. We're doing feasibility now. I would look to move sooner than later on this transmission pipe relocation. We're starting to move some projects around. I think right now the most feasible sort of route is up Gallagher Hill, because it's got to come from the East Channel Bridge and then route up to the top of 40th. So that is sort of like just how do you get there with the greatest amount of public right of way and access. That's sort of the easy one to look at. We're doing that work now, but I would anticipate that the replacement of that transmission line is a near-term project, not a long-term project.
Very good. Thank you. Steve.
Well, I was just going to remind Jason, you need to go, right?
And I want to make sure I answer any questions, and then I'll take Elaine in. I appreciate
my last question was only actually relating just the size of the tanks. I couldn't remember the exact size.
2 4 million gallon reservoir tanks.
So 2 times 4 million. Okay.
Will.
First, real quick, I should have said this was my first question, but Jason, thanks to just you and the entire team. You're navigating some real health and safety risks with this whole situation, and you've really risen to the challenge. So thank you. Question about, as we move to voluntary phase, do we have some communications and PR materials ready that gives people concrete examples of what to do?
Oh, yeah, we have a comms team that has been working this. In fact, that's part of the reason we haven't officially gone to the voluntary stage yet, is because our comms team has been making sure everything's ramped up and ready to sort of hit, post. Lots of different communication tools that will be sent out in various ways, shapes, and forms. Online social media posts, mailers. I believe Jesse's working on a video, all sorts of different pieces that will be part of that communication tool set that's being worked out. And Elaine jumped on. She's got a bunch of stuff to add to it, I'm sure.
No, maybe not, but we have lists of very specific actions that we're recommending, because different things work for different people, and there are a lot of potential actions that people can take. just so you know, there is a Let's Talk page for water conservation that has been stood up, and it has just a lot there in terms of, recommendations. But like Jason said, there's every avenue of communications we can think of. We're even, I think our team is now working on a audio spot to run on the Mercer Island radio station. And so we're really trying to hit every avenue that we can, without bombarding people with a giant list of 30 things they can do, some really low hanging fruit of water conservation out there.
Great, thank you.
Todd.
Sorry, hey, just quickly on the voluntary compliance topic. I guess I'm inferring that there is a plan to execute some sort of compliance activity beyond volunteering. Am I accurate in that assumption? And can you share an example of what that might look like?
So I'll say we're not. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. Based off the results from the community last year, I'm optimistic that the voluntary compliance will be enough to sustain what we need. We do have a plan to go to compliance. I will say there's a couple pieces to it though. Before we do that, we have to go back to the city council because there's some regulatory authority that has to be worked out and cleaned up in terms of language for that. So we do have that as part of our planning efforts. I'm hopeful that we don't have to do it. If we do, there'll be a city council action that's required for it. And then Elaine, you can talk about some of the examples that we have teed up.
Yeah, so there's only, as we get into potentially the mandatory stage, like Jason said, we're really trying to avoid it, and getting these comms out is a big piece of that. And obviously on the emergency side too, there are some enforceable actions in there. So they're, things that you would expect. They're all outdoors, right? Where they are public, things like pressure washing your driveway or filling a pool in the middle of this. We actually do have code language that allows us to act on that right now, but like Jason said, we would need to go back to council for that. We are really hoping between the timing of this liner going in and the type of reaction that we saw last April during the water emergency, that we can avoid that altogether. So.
Great, thank you. Excellent presentation, great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to jump off.
Unless there's another question, let's let Jason head off to his band show.
We don't have to end the topic now. Elaine and Alan are
absolutely
well versed, and truth be told, these two are the champions of this whole project. They have taken on a ton of this work and have done a marvelous job. So they are more than capable of answering your questions. But if there's additional follow-ups that any of the board members want, please reach out. If you want to do a site tour, you want to go see the site, we can arrange for that as well. I think it does add some additional context to, the complexity of the location and the pipe. So I will just say things are going to ramp up in the next couple of weeks as this construction crew starts to come out to the site. My understanding is that some of the pipe is actually being scheduled for delivery tomorrow out to the right of way. So fingers crossed, things are going to ramp up, and hopefully the next time we meet, we're talking about when this thing is going to be fully operational.
Very good.
So with
again,
that,
thanks
everybody.
Thank you for all your work, Jason. Thank you for all your work. You're excused. All right. So are there any other questions about this topic for
Tim, I had a question.
Meredith, please.
Yeah, and Elaine, I think you can answer this. Can you remind me how long the water emergency was last year? I was thinking that we thought it was going to be a couple of days, and it turned, and my recollection is it turned into like a couple of weeks, and I don't remember the details. Because I was wondering if it was going to be an issue if last summer we had a water emergency that was only a few days, but this summer we're going to be talking about several, not emergency, but conservation, several weeks, if that affected any plans.
Sorry, I missed the last bit. If it affected any.
Well, either how the communication is or affected your analysis of how whether voluntary would be enough.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. There are some really important differences between what happened this last year and what's happening this year, right? So we're getting water right now. That is so different than last year where we were getting no water, right? So we only had what was in our reservoir tanks, and we were really just trying to nurse it for as long as we could and really slow down use. I'm trying to think what else I can provide for you. I just think we saw, operationally when we looked at, we were able to track sort of how those peaks and valleys, and I know that was presented to you last year, but just seeing, I think it was, I forget what it was, but it was at least a 10% drop within the first day of us announcing that we needed to impose some water restrictions, which we were not expecting to see. So while it may not be quite that steep, and I think the messaging is a little bit different here, I think it really informed us in terms of what we could expect from residents.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on this topic? Not seeing anybody. Elaine, Alan, Patrick, Clint, thank you all for all your work on this, and on behalf of everyone from the island. Always a stressful time. It seems like emergencies are becoming our stock in trade. So well done, well done.
Don't say that. I think we've met our quota now. So
yeah,
I think
for a while at least. We don't have to worry about this until next year. Okay, hearing nothing else on that topic, I'll move to what had been item 2 is now item 3, an update on the water meter replacement project.
So good evening again, Utility Board. I don't think I ever truly introduced myself. Elaine Summergren, Deputy Public Works Director on the operations side of the house. So I have the honor of being one of the primary point people in the city for the meter replacement project. And you've heard about it at various points over the last, I don't even know how many years, 5 years at least. 10 years. All right.
We were talking about it when I first came on the board.
So I'm very pleased to say that this project is well underway now, and I wanted to just provide the board with an update on where the project is, some of the issues that have come up along the way, and what we expect to see happening with this project in the next few months and even year. So I apologize. I will say I tried to have a PowerPoint ready for tonight, but like Jason said, SPU has taken over our time. So I'm just going to give a verbal report, but I am very happy to answer any questions. And Alan has been very closely associated with this project, obviously. So I think we can really address any of the questions that come up. Feel free to interrupt me if you have those. I will recognize your hand. So just to kind of zoom out on this project. So this project, as you heard, has been in development for many, many years. The city did an evaluation of what the best system would be for replacing a very old meter infrastructure on the island. Our system has been composed of a real hodgepodge of models and brands and types of meters. Many of which are very old. Right now we're looking at, with our current, right as we are beginning meter installation, about 70% of our meters being over 15 years old. And 15 years old is kind of a break point for these analog meters. It's when they really start to be a little more unreliable in terms of how they account for water use. And what they tend to do is they don't undercount water, they don't overcount water use. They always undercount water use. They slow down over time. And so what that means is that the city is actually seeing more unaccounted water loss over the years. And we suspect that a pretty good deal of that is associated with older meters. So I want to just also remind everyone that a new meter infrastructure, so the type of metering infrastructure that the city decided to go with was an advanced metering infrastructure, or AMI. That's often how this project is referred to. And what this is it's essentially a smart meter system. So every water meter has a very small transmission antenna, and then around the island in various locations, not too many, 6 or 7 eventually, just receiving antennas that actually take that data from those smart meters. That data is transmitted approximately every 4 to 6 hours, and it gives hourly data. And that transmission is about a second long each time. And that comes back to the city, and that can be used by our billing system, and we can talk about other parts of that. So on the meter installation portion, I'm pleased to report we have, as of right before this meeting, we have 5,378 meters in the ground. That is approximately 68% of our just over 7,800 meters. Yes, that's really good metrics so far. So we're sneaking up on 3/4 of the way through. Obviously, there are some that are a little more troublesome than others. So we've left a few little stragglers behind that need a little more attention. They're in tricky situations, but they have been moving through this. That is not to say there haven't been issues. There are always issues. I think, especially on a project of this size, which city staff have been working really hard to nip as quickly in the bud as we can. Some performance issues of slipping behind on certain aspects of the project, maybe not keeping up with our utility billing schedule quite as well as we would like. We would like there to be good buffer in there for getting the meters in the ground, making sure that they're functioning, and then being able to integrate them into our utility billing and software, and then getting those bills out on time. I am pleased to report that we have so far gotten all of our utility billing out on time for all of the books that have been read so far. That has not been without its issues also. There's lots of programs talking to each other along the way, transferring this data. But we've really worked out a lot of the kinks. So we're in much better shape. Probably the biggest issue that we've seen come up, and Alan, I may ask you to come in and explain some of this, particularly if there are questions. But one of the issues is that we have an old system, and a lot of these meters actually have utilized, when they were installed, what we call a longer lay length. So they require adapters that are a little bit longer than usual. And the assumption was, when the installer came on, that they would be reusing a lot of these. But as you all know, they cannot reuse parts containing lead. And so they've needed to actually source all new adapters for these. And I don't want to hazard a guess about what percentage of the meters is, but if I had to, I would say it's maybe 20% of our meters. Does that sound about right, Alan? And so yes. What we found actually is that there aren't enough of these adapters in the United States. Actually, the production has fallen off, and so we have had a little bit of a back order issue. We've finally made contact with a manufacturer in Canada who is fast tracking some manufacture and getting those out to us as quickly as possible. I will say that the installer has been pretty flexible about how they rework things, and we don't think that it's going to end up putting the project behind schedule, at least not the meter installation portion of this project. So that is good news. We are hoping to get a very large shipment of them, probably about 700 within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then the contractor will be able to get back in there and finish up all those ones they had to skip along the way. The second portion of the project, which I alluded to earlier, was the base station part of the project. And this has actually been perhaps the more tricky aspect of this. As many of you recall, we did a rather large outreach effort last fall in anticipation of submitting our applications for conditional use permits for these base stations. And during that public process, so when we did mailers, we did a new Let's Talk page. We did a lot of outreach to all of the houses within about 300 feet of those proposed meter or base station locations. There were a couple locations where we actually had some pretty significant feedback from the neighborhood that they were not in favor of allowing the installation of this base station, particularly at the south end of the island, which is a trickier location for us because there is a little more topography down there where it can be a little trickier for the antennas to pick up as many smart meters. So what we did in response is we actually asked our contractor on this to run a new propagation study to find out if we opened our parameters of where we would allow these base stations, what were the possibilities. So a couple of the things we asked for were, say we could put them anywhere in the right of way. We weren't trying to tie them to city assets. Could we bring down the height of those antennas? Because one of the pieces of feedback we received was that antennas that are located at 80 to 90 feet were a concern around affecting views. And so we're looking at, is it possible to put some of these antennas up a little bit lower so that they're more in line with the tops of power poles or just above? What was really surprising when we got that propagation study back was that they actually reduced the number of antennas that we would need. And that was because they were really able to optimize where those antennas went on the island. And so instead of the original 6 antennas that were called for, we ended up with 6, instead of the 7, that were originally called for, 6 were actually identified in the propagation the second propagation study. We did submit application or conditional use permits for 2 of those antennas in December. And those are the ones on city-owned assets, Island Crest Park and the reservoir site. Both of those were going to have base stations mounted on existing structures already. We were able to get those approved. We went through a full public hearing process on that last month, and they were approved. They were ready to go, and we were able to actually turn them on right away and be able to start to see meters being read by that system. So they are being picked up by those antennas. The good news about those 2 antennas is they're very central to the island. And so they're able to reach a really large portion of our 7,800 meters that we're trying to pull data from. Somewhere roughly between 5,000 and 6,000 meters, we're hoping, by the time all is said and done. So that's the good news. The bad news is that conditional use permits take a really long time. These ones that we did were approximately 6 months start to finish. And so we obviously, time is of the essence. We really would like to have these antennas up as soon as possible. We did go to council and talk to council about it earlier this year, and we're looking to make another push on getting some base stations installed and those conditional use permits applied for very quickly. I will say that 2 weeks ago, I did also apply for one more conditional use permit, and this is for a base station adjacent to Roanoke Park in the right of way. Okay. I'll keep pushing on unless I see hands. I know I'm giving you guys a whole fire hose of information here. Once these antennas are all up and running as promised, we've talked about a customer portal being activated. So this is where any Mercer Island water customer can go and actually look at their hourly water use. This would be really useful during water conservation efforts, obviously, right? We'd like to get this up and running as soon as possible. So that people can more or less see real time what their water use is looking like. They can, and the city will be able to capture leaks very quickly. We can actually put in leak detection thresholds on people's accounts, so we'll know if they're running higher than usual and can check in. Unfortunately, because we haven't had these base stations up and running, we also don't have a customer portal up and running. We are working on that right now, since we do anticipate that a fairly large number of these meters will be able to be read in the next couple months. So our aim right now is to have that customer portal up and running by the end of July, and I will report back as we continue to develop that. I want to give a very strong shout out to our customer service team who they have been absolute champs at fielding all manner of phone calls about this project. Questions about who are those weird people in my front yard and what are they doing near my meter? Some issues with, water not being turned back on appropriately, or what is this door hanger, or just all kinds of questions. They've been absolute rock stars. They probably get on the order of 20 calls a week about this project. So they've been fantastic advocates and just getting information out there. So want to thank them. We are anticipating that as we get through the first cycle of reading with these new meters, like I was talking about at the beginning, older meters were probably undercounting water use in a lot of cases. And so we do anticipate that as we get into this second round of reading, people are going to start to notice that their water bills may be a little bit higher. And so we are working with the customer service team on preparing them for those calls, how we talk about that as really reflecting actual water use, not that it's being overcounted. Bless you. So
sorry, I was trying to hit the mute button before.
You did it, but I still saw you. So we're on track to have all of the meters in by the end of July. And we're very hopeful that we're able to meet that with the adapters coming in. Like I said, I will continue to push on next steps for those base stations so that we can really get the system fully up and operational. But wanted to make sure that you all knew where we were on it. And if you were getting questions from fellow islanders about the project, I'm happy to answer any of them.
Thank you, Elena. Very, very thorough report. Important project. Like I say, Steve and I have been on the board the longest, can tell you that this is a project that's been a decade in the making. So glad to hear it's in the end is in sight. Open up for questions for members from the board. George.
Is there going to be an increase in our water bill to reflect the cost of replacing these meters?
No. Nope. This has been built into the capital project over many years and rates for many years. So this is not, there will not be any noticeable increase over where we've been. This is baked into the same system as our, water main replacements and every other infrastructure improvement.
Thank you.
It's in essence part of
Steve.
Sorry. Just it's in essence a part of the increases that we've already discussed over the last several years.
And it'll make up for leakage by capturing more actual water being distributed, right?
Yeah. Well, we are hoping
water that we're paying SPU for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have to report every year to DOH on our unaccounted water loss. And so, we're really hoping to see a noticeable decrease over the next year.
What has that been, Elaine?
I'm going to ask Alan to report on that.
Yeah, so the last report that we did for 2022, we saw a decrease of the 3-year average of 13%. The previous report we did for 2021 was just under 15%. So we're showing a little bit of decrease, but these meters will definitely capture a lot and we'll be able to reduce that quite a bit.
Very good. Meredith.
Yeah, Elaine, in terms of the towers on the south end, and you had said if you lowered the height of the towers, we could maybe do one fewer tower. Where are you with that south end process? Do you have to have another series of public hearings and then go through the conditional use permit?
Right. So all of the antennas that we're proposing to put in, whether they're very tall or down at 55 feet where they're now called for, those all require a conditional use permit, an individual conditional use permit. And so, yes, so if we are moving a location of a base station that we had previously done a public participation process on, we then will restart that for a new location and reach out to the neighbors within 300 feet of that new location. So that is a whole other process associated with it. The reason that we were able to apply for the conditional use permit for Roanoke is because it was in that original propagation study and part of that original outreach plan.
And the timing on that?
On the Roanoke one or on the other three?
The ones down south.
Well, it's actually interesting. So there's, I believe the new propagation study calls for one, I would say more in the East Seattle neighborhood. It's actually calling for one just east of the reservoirs, and then also at the very south end. And so it's actually a big triangle. I don't have timing on it right now, but I have started to talk to Jason about whether we can begin the public participation on that one as well, just to at least get the ball rolling, because that is a, pretty involved process.
Other questions? Hearing none, I'll just express appreciation, Elaine, for a job that's been years in the making, and nice to see it being carried through to completion. All right, that was the last item of regular business. And what did I do? I have to call up my agenda, excuse me. Any other business?
So Tim, I just wanted to kind of express to Eileen that if in fact it's easy for the department to do a site visit on the prior agenda item on the water briefing, I would be interested in doing that, but only if it's easy for the group. I don't want to slow down anything they're doing. I don't know if other members would be interested in going to a site visit for that as well.
Yeah, ditto.
Yeah, I can send out an email and try and set up maybe a couple of times that work for folks. Maybe just a quick doodle poll or something, so we can try and get a few people there at a time. But we don't mind doing those at all. We're out at the site pretty regularly, and we're happy to show people around.
Right.
So
no, Elaine, thank you. And Meredith, great comment. Yeah, I think that would be very worthwhile. At least extend the option. Just in the interest for our new members, I don't know, Craig, Todd, if you had the chance to look at our work plan. There's kind of a pretty regular cycle to what we do on the board. We have another meeting July 9. We may discuss a field trip, something that we have done with the Public Works group most years. It's very interesting to see the various components of our infrastructure. But the other big item of business on July 9 is the construction update. The construction capital improvement projects are one of, if not the biggest component of our budget. So we spend a meeting going over anticipated capital projects. That's scheduled for 9. We generally take an August recess since people tend to be out of town. September and October lead into the rate reviews. September is EMS and stormwater. EMS, the EMTs, is funded through the utility for reasons more historical than logical. And then stormwater, and we break them up that way because stormwater tends to be the more involved, and water tends to be more involved. So we do one of those in this year. September is EMS and stormwater. October is sewer and water. Tend to have the most discussion about them. We'll do our evaluation of the rates and recommendation to the council. Again, we are merely making recommendations. We're not making decisions, but we prepare our recommendations to the council. I think I'm correct. Steve, check me if I'm wrong. I think the council has gone along with our recommendations, I think, every year.
Yeah, I don't remember any time that they really.
So it's, we're an important part of the process. So I hope everybody be able to participate. Take the November off, and then December is Recology, the garbage contractor. They are contractually obligated to do an annual report to us every year, and so that's currently scheduled for December. So that takes us through the end of the year.
And I just wanted to add that I agree with Tim. I think the field trips, particularly for new members, having been a recent new member, are really very helpful to see the infrastructure and have a chance to talk to the crew members who work there and ask questions and see it. So I encourage that as well.
Couldn't agree more.
I would like to perhaps make a pitch for scheduling that sooner than later, just so it's on everyone's calendar. So I may send out a poll for that one too. You'll pardon all of my polls, but I think it would be great to schedule that and have it on our work plan also.
Absolutely. Because I think if we give ourselves a little time, Elaine, there are interesting projects and less interesting projects, and so yeah, have some
drum up all the
time to
good
plan
ones.
that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I will say that for our crews, Wednesdays tend to be the best dates for those field trips, just in terms of staffing. So you may see a heavy Wednesday.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, Elaine. Appreciate everything you did tonight, as well as everything you're signing up to do. Anything else that should come up before the board? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All second.
Any all in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night,
All
everyone.
right, everybody. Thank you very much. Good meeting, and we'll see you in a month.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye now.
Good to meet
Thank
the
you.
new members.
Good to meet
Likewise. Thank you.
Bye.